So let me do a little bit of an intro here. A chord substitution is when you take one chord in a piece and replace it with another to create a different sound. Well, how does it work and what are the different types? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Okay, the most basic chord substitutions involve replacing a chord with another that share two common tones. So obviously that just means two notes that they have in common. For example, you can substitute a D minor chord for an F major chord since they have two common tones, F and A. So let me show you on the piano and on the sheet music here. So as I said, you can replace an F major chord made up of the notes F, A, and C with a D minor chord made up of the notes D, F, and A. And that's because they have a crossover of two notes in common, F and A. So say we have our sheet music here. We actually have an F major chord written right here. And let me turn this into a half note so we can draw another chord next to it. So I can replace that F major with a D minor, and on the paper it looks like this. And let me drag it over. So you can actually see that there are two notes in common. I mean, you could visualize it on the piano, but this is what it looks like on the sheet music. And that's the general way you want to go about it. There's some different things you want to keep in mind, though, when doing chord substitutions, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Let's do another example. So let's do another example. So say I had a I don't know, maybe a G major chord. Well, what chord could I replace that with? It has to have two notes in common. Well, if you want a simple trick on how to find a chord that you can replace it with, an easy thing to do is just take the chord that you have, take the bottom note, and move two notes down and build a chord on that. Now, you have to pay attention to things like key signatures in that, but if we're in the key of G, there's only one sharp, F sharp, which, you know, none of these notes are, so we don't have to worry about it. So we have E, G, and B, so an E minor chord can replace a G major chord. Also, if you do the trick in the opposite direction, or actually if you start on the middle note and stack two evenly up there, that gives you another chord that you can replace it with. So you can replace a G major chord also with a B diminished chord, which we'll talk about, because that's a specific type. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so now that you get the concept that you can replace any two chords so long as they share two common tones, let's talk about the different common types of chord substitutions there are. These include the 2-5 substitution, the 7 diminished to 1 substitution, the tonic substitution, and the tritone substitution. Let's take a look at the 2-5 substitution. Okay, so here we have a standard 1-4-5-1 progression. All that means is that our first chord is built on the first note of the scale. The fourth chord is built on the fourth note of the scale. The 5 is built on the fifth note of the scale, and then you go back to the 1 chord in C major. All right, so let me write these out. So you got 1, oops. So you got 1. Let me draw that a little bit better. You got 1. You got 4. These are all written out in Roman numerals, by the way. A capital Roman numeral indicates a major chord, and a lowercase Roman numeral indicates a minor. So these are all major chords. So you have C major, F major, G major, back to C major. So the 2-5 progression substitution basically means that we have 5 right here, right? So basically what that means is that in place of this 4, we're going to put a 2 chord, which, hey, is lowercase, so that's actually going to turn into a minor chord. And so we're going from an F major chord, and we're replacing it with the 2 in that key, So replacing it with the 2 in that key, as you can see, is D minor. Well, hey, didn't I mention right in the beginning you could replace F major with D minor? Why? Because they have 2 notes in common. So this creates a 1, 2, 5, 1 progression, which is why it's called the 2-5 substitution. Okay, so next we're going to talk about it looks pretty odd, right? A 7, and it has a circle that indicates diminished. So 7 diminished, or leading tone diminished chord to 1 substitution. So you can just call it, I guess, diminished 7th to 1. So let's take a look at this and how this works out. Okay, so this time we're actually replacing the 5 chord, because like I said, that you could replace G major with B diminished. And B diminished is actually that 7, that funny looking symbol you saw earlier, the 7 in the key of C. So we're actually taking out this 5 chord, just like we replaced the 4 chord before with 2, we're replacing 5 with diminished 7. So let me show you what this is going to look like. All I got to do actually is just move it to B, not C, B. There we go. There you go. So now instead of 1, 4, 5, 1, you have 1, 4, 7, and then back to 1. So that 7 diminished chord actually creates a different flavor, a much different flavor than, say, 1, 4, 5, so it's 1, 4, 7 diminished. It really creates a crunchy type of sound when you're playing it. So like I said, the whole point, I think, to chord substitutions is really to change up the harmony, which changes the overall kind of background sound to the music. Okay, next we're going to talk about the tonic substitution. So now we're actually going to be replacing one of the other chords. As you may be able to guess, first time I replaced the 4 chord, second time I replaced the 5 chord with that 7 that I didn't change back yet. But this time we are actually going to be replacing the 1 to create a different kind of progression here. And this is called a tonic substitution, and that's because that 1 chord, or the first note of the scale, is known as the tonic. So we're actually replacing the tonic chord with another chord, and we commonly do that with a 6 chord. So let me write this out. Okay, so like I said, we're replacing the tonic, so let's erase that 1 there. And we're replacing it with a 6 chord. So how do we figure out what that is, right? Well, we have the first note of the scale. You just count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You build a chord on that note, and hey, that's an A minor chord. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move it to A. So now we have 6, 4, 5, 1. And actually, you can actually use a combination of these chord substitutions. Okay, so we've replaced the 1 chord with a 6 chord. And I did that again. 1 chord with a 6 chord. So what kind of sound difference do you expect that to make, right? So if we had a 1 chord before, which was major, well, this time it's going to start with a minor chord, so it's going to start a little more sad. So you have like 6, 4, 5, 1, right? It has a much different sound than 1, 4, 5, 1. Now, if you notice that I'm playing it different on the piano than what we have on the paper, that's because I'm playing the chords in inversions to create what we call voice leading. But that's not what this lesson is about, so I wouldn't really worry about it, since I think it's easier to visualize these in a root position. But this one really creates a different sound, doesn't it? I actually really like it. Hey, let's mix some up. So remember that before we had some different types. We had the 2-5 substitution. So let's add that in there along with the tonic substitution. So now I'm going to go from A minor, and then instead of F major next, I'm actually going to play D minor instead. And then the 5, 1. So it had a little bit of a different sound, right? So that was 4, 5, 1, and this is 2, 5, 1. So the difference in sound between those and why you might choose one or the other is that the 6, 2, 5, 1 begins with 2 minor chords, whereas the other one had a major in there. You know, it has a little bit of a different sound. So it all depends on what kind of mood that you're going for. Jazz uses these a lot, so it's really, really important if you're looking to learn more about jazz harmony, or you are looking to learn even more about music theory. Speaking of jazz, let's talk about the tritone substitution. Okay, the tritone substitution is probably the hardest to understand, and that's because it kind of breaks the rules of common tones a little bit because you alter the tones. You'll see what I mean here in a second. So what a tritone substitution is you're taking the 5 chord. So we're taking this one right here, this one, and we are replacing that with a tritone chord that is a major tritone chord, or a major chord built on the tritone of G. And you may be like, what? What did you say? Oh, it says error saving. You may be thinking, what did you say? What does that mean? Well, what a tritone is that you go up to the 5th note of the scale, 3, 4, 5, and then you subtract one half step or a semitone to create what we call a diminished 5th, or it's called a tritone, and it has a very dissonant, cringy kind of sound. But this time what we're doing, because we're doing it on the 5 chord, we're actually going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from G, the note built from the 5 chord, and then you're going to flat it 1 to create a D flat there instead of a D, and that creates a tritone. Next, what you have to do is take that tritone and build a major chord on it, just like that. So what we have now, why is it doing that? Tons of computer stuff today. All right, hold on. So what we have now is, instead of the 5 chord, we have this D flat, or instead of the G chord, we have a D flat major chord. So let me write that out. So now we have 1, we're going up to the 4th chord. You got, instead of 5, we actually have now our tritone substitution. So I'm just going to write tritone sub. So now we have our tritone substitution. So 1, 4, tritone sub, back to 1. Kind of strange, huh? So we're replacing the 5 chord with a chord that's built on its tritone. Now this makes a lot of sense. Now you may be thinking, well, there's no common tones really. I mean, there is a a D in there that does have in common. And if you, by the way, this also works for 7th chords. So if you make these, like so C7, you can replace with A minor 7. So if you just tack on 1 extra note up above, it still works for all of these substitutions. But anyway, this D flat chord doesn't really have much in common with the G major chord, G, B, and D. It does have kind of a D flat in there, but that's, the notes are a little bit different this time. So it makes a lot of sense though to do a 1. We're going to combine a couple of these substitutions now. We're going to do a 2-5 sub, except this time we're going to go 2 to the tritone sub and back to 1. And actually what this creates is a D minor chord right here. And I'm going to show you what this does. So you have C major. And by the way, whenever you're doing voice leading, which I mentioned earlier, the idea is when you move from chord to chord, you want to move in as little movement as possible. Usually by step or half step, like that. So this time we have a 1, a 2, then we have that tritone sub, back to 1, and hey, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? That's because we're moving this chord. The next chord, D minor, you just move all 3 notes up 1, so they're all very close together. When you move to this tritone sub, you can actually keep the F where it is and just move the D to the D flat, A to A flat, like that, and back to 1. So you have what we call a nice chromatic motion between the chords. So like I said, this one's very, very common in jazz. Probably a little bit harder to understand than the others, but so long as you just generally understand the concept that you can replace another chord, 2 chords with each other, 1 chord with another chord, if they have 2 common tones, that's the most important thing to get. So I have another community challenge for you. So if you're watching the recording of this, I want you to practice this or look for this in your music, and then let me know in the comments. So do you have any chord substitutions in the pieces you are learning? So you want to list the piece as well as the substitution you think is happening in that piece and leave it in the comments. This will really help you take the knowledge we talked about today and really extend upon it and really start putting it into practice. So I'd really like to know what you think in the comments. Okay, time for questions from the live streamers. So let me know what questions you have about chord substitutions. I think if you get the general gist of it, like I said, I think you're in good shape. But I do want to answer any of the questions that you might have right now. And then after that, if you have any general questions, like about learning music in general, let me know about that as well. Now I got hiccups coming on, or burps. Excuse me. All right, and then while you are letting me know your questions, let me, I don't know, maybe we'll do this. Okay, so while some questions are rolling in, I'm going to talk about some ways you can support the channel. Let me just get one thing up here. Oops. Do you like, hold on a second. Are you learning a lot from these lessons here on YouTube and you're looking to really take your piano and music learning experience to the next level? Well, take a look at the courses I have over on my website. There it is. pianolessonsontheweb.com, where I have over 20 courses I developed to help you learn even a lot more about piano and music. And whether you're a beginner just starting out, you need maybe a refresher on the beginning stuff, or you have been learning for a while and you're looking for topics that we haven't covered yet on the channel and may not cover, well, probably never cover, at least in the detail I do over on the website, then you definitely want to check it out. Also, it has instructional videos, the same style that you see here on YouTube, except it also has printable sheet music examples, assignments, activities, and a lot more to really help enhance your learning. We've actually had a lot of community members here in our classroom attend and take courses, and they are very, very happy. You can check out, of course, the testimonials on the page as well by scrolling up and clicking there. All right, one more thing I want to tell you about it is that if you go to the Buy Courses page and you're ready to sign up, use the code YouTube during checkout to get an additional 15% off any order. That includes the course packs or the individual courses themselves. So if you're a big fan of the channel and you're looking to learn more, I recommend you check out pianolessonsontheweb.com. It's a great way to support the channel, and it's also a great way to support and continue your learning. And Sue is here. Sue in our chat right now says, "Hi everybody. First time here. I love Tim's courses. So good. Thank you so much. Great courses. I recommend to all," says Gary. And yeah, I think that's it. So we already, just me mentioning this, we have some community members here in the chat right now that have taken the courses, and they can vouch for how good they are. So thank you everybody for that. Yeah. Oh, and then some other ways you can support the channel if you want. You can shop at my Amazon store. There's a link in the description. It says like recommended books and keywords and things like that. And basically what that is like a collection of Amazon items of things that I recommend if you're learning how to play the piano. So if you want to learn, like get some lesson books, or you want to, maybe pick up a new keyboard and you're looking for what is good, you want to check it out there. These are all things that I have experience with. I've either used them myself or I have somebody I know close to me that has used them, so that I can recommend those. And by the way, when you purchase something from that, I'll get a small, I guess, kickback from Amazon, and it won't cost you anything extra. So if you need to buy books anyway, then why not? You can help me out at the same time. And then, of course, we have Patreon, patreon.com/lessons on the web. And number 4 is say, I'm sorry, Tim, I really love your channel here, but I don't have any money. And that's totally fine. I can definitely relate to that. I think a lot of us can. And really, honestly, you just being here really, really helps out the community. Whether you ask questions, which is phenomenal, answer either, ask me questions, answer other questions, that's perfect. Or if you just like to sit back, relax, and enjoy the lessons and learn from them, that helps out a lot. And I can't tell you how much that means to me. So thank you for that. Okay, let's see here. We do get some questions here. Okay, let's see. That's cool, says Adria, but I don't anything about creating music or how to create anything, even with humming. Just really waiting to get back to it when ready and back to learning. All right. I don't know if you're answering. Wait a second. Let me show everybody what we're talking about here. Okay. I see you're answering, I think, Fuddy Duddy. Okay, so Fuddy Duddy asks a question, which is really good. Tim, does one have to use a modified scale when playing against these chord substitutions? So no. That's the great thing about these chord substitutions. So what Fuddy Duddy is talking about modified scale is something probably like a minor pentatonic scale or a blues scale. Actually is probably a great reference, because you're actually kind of combining a major scale and a minor scale into one, and actually even a couple more notes other than that. So basically you're taking a scale and you're modifying a few of the notes. So no, you don't have to use modified chords at all for this. So if you have, say we're in C major to make things easy, and you have a C major chord on the bottom. So when I move to this 2 chord and I replace it with the 4 chord, or I replace the 4 chord with the 2 chord, I don't really have to modify the scale at all. So there, I just used a bunch of chord substitutions right there. You can see that it did change the sound of it a little bit, but the melody I just kept the same, at least the same collection of notes, and it didn't change it at all. But great question. Okay, and Karen says, thank you very much, Karen. Karen says, great courses and super community. I too am glad that I joined Tim as a student. Thank you so much. All right, and Fuddy Duddy, okay. So any other questions about chord substitutions? If not, totally cool. Oh, and by the way, Gary Cook, maybe I did mention that before, but Gary also vouches for me as well. I think I did mention that, actually. All right. Any other questions? If not, I'll just kind of go over what we're going to be talking about here in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so like I mentioned before, if you go to my website, pianolessonsontheweb.com, and you click on Community, let me bring it here. It brings us to our community page, so you can see what we're talking about. So as you can see tonight, we have an introduction to chord substitutions on piano. And then next time, on the 21st, 2 days from now, we have another live stream. I answer your questions about finger exercises. So these include things like scales, maybe even chords, just your question about how the fingers work on the piano, because if you don't know, to play piano correctly, you have to use proper fingering, or else you'll run out of fingers and trip all over each other. So if you have some questions about that, think about what they are. Maybe jot down, 2 or 3 of them, or as many as you can come up with. Even if you don't have any, totally cool. And then come out Sunday, and I'll be answering your questions, the community questions, about those finger exercises. And then next Friday, we're meeting again, where I'm going to be talking about the most common chord progressions in rock music. I've had a lot of requests to do lessons about different genre, like rock, pop, classical, and this is kind of like my first experimentation into that. I really, I'm just going to go over like maybe some of the basic chord progressions you can find, and maybe not so basic chord progressions you can find in rock music. And then the following Sunday, I'm doing another community Q&A. I don't know what the topic will be yet, but then the following Friday, I'm going to be talking about how to play fast piano runs and trills, and then you can check out the rest of the calendar. It would be helpful if I showed the calendar, wouldn't it? Okay, how to turn the page in the middle of a song is a great question by Barbara, which as soon as I figure out the right viewpoint, I'll answer it. So how to turn the page in the middle of a song. Great question. There's a few ways to do this. So unfortunately, if you are learning a piece, right, you want to be able to play from, page 1 to page 2, page 3 to page 4, duh, right? But you also want to be able to play from like the bottom of page 1 into page 2 without like having to flip pages or really reset and, figure things out from there. Sure, that's fine when you first learn the piece. But actually what I recommend you do, there's a number of things you can do. One is not as technically savvy. You don't have to be as technically savvy to do this first thing. First thing you'll want to do is, if it's a piece you're serious about, you want to learn how to play it fluidly from beginning to end, working out the bottom page of pages to the top of the next consecutive page. If you want to do that, you want to take your book and you want to go to the photocopy machine, and you actually want to make separate page copies for all the pages that you have, and then lay them out in a row. If your stand won't stand it, if it's not big enough to fit those on, you can look this up on Google on how to extend your stand. You can use cardboard. You can use a few other things to basically extend out these. I can't actually show you my stand right now because I don't have a camera facing that way, but you can put something up that will extend basically the stand so you can fit more on it. Like I say, cardboard works great. If you have an old cardboard box, you can rip off one of the sides, bend it a little bit, and tape it on, or just get it to stick on somehow to the edge of your stand, and that will extend it. That way you can set up maybe 5-6 pages at a time that way. That's what I recommend. It sounds overly simple, but that's it. Now, if you have a computer or something like what I use, like with a tablet, you can actually hit the page down button, and it will go to the next page in the PDF file or something like that. But you still actually have to physically like get up and move and do something, right? So actually what they make, and they actually make wireless ones too. But this is actually what I use to control the viewpoint when we're doing the live stream. So as you can see, as I'm pressing different buttons, it's moving around everything. And that's because I have this keypad programmed with the program I use to sort this all out, XSplit Broadcaster. But anyway, the point is that you can actually get one of these, and this has a page down button on it as well, and you just plug it in your computer and you click on page down, and there you go. I mean, it'll take you to that next page really quick, and then you don't have to have a keyboard necessarily in front of you. You can just have a keypad. They also make wireless ones if your computer has Bluetooth. I think most of them run on Bluetooth, so you have to make sure your computer has it. That way, that would be even easier. They make a foot pedal. I have a foot pedal here. I don't feel like grabbing it because it's underneath a bunch of stuff. A wireless foot pedal as well that you can hit. It does the same exact thing. It just pages down. That works okay. But honestly, I think a scanner and a printer would be great. Your local library, if you have one in your town, they should have a scanner or a printer there, or a photocopier. or anywhere, maybe the post office. Not sure. I have to burp again, so excuse me. Oh, great question by Sebastian. Sebastian asks, hello, do these substitutions work on songs that are in minor keys? The answer is yes, except, if you... So basically what a minor key would do for you is it would change all of our progressions today, and it would flip them. So instead of, remember when we had the 1-4-5-1 progression, which we don't have written out here, but we had the 1-4-5 progression. Let me show you on the piano, right? We had 1, so C major, F major, G major, back to C major. Well, we'll just turn all these into minor. So C minor, F minor, G minor, back to C minor. Now the thing to keep in mind though is that when we do the two, when we're replacing when we're replacing 4 with 2, right, like we did before, you have to instead use a D diminished chord. So it would be a diminished 2, 5, 1 suspension, like that. So what you want to look up, excuse me, you want to look this up. Chords, yeah, let me show you here. Built on minor scale. Okay, so here's your perfect example. This is at key-notes.com. All I did to get here was I typed in chords built on minor scale into Google, and it'll bring you here. So basically this shows you two things, right? You have your major scale right here, and this is everything I mentioned. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this gives you the pattern of major and minor chords that are in that scale. So if you don't know, so like we have C major again, there's a pattern to how the chords occur in the scale. So obviously the 1 chord's major, and then the 2 chord is minor, 3's minor, and then 4 and 5 are major, right? Those were the chords we had earlier. You have 6, which is minor. You have B, which is diminished always, and then you have C, which is major again. This is true for all major scales. It isn't true for all minor scales. What you can expect when you switch to a minor scale is that all of a sudden most of the chords are minor. So the 1, 4, and 5 chords, which used to be major, are now minor. That's pretty easy to conceptualize. However, the 3 chord, which used to be minor, is now major. So everything is flipped around, except you want to keep in mind for 2 of the chords. The 2 chord, instead of being minor now, is diminished. And that's because if you think about it, if we have our 1, 4, and 5 chords, they all have a flat in the middle. So the F chord, which is usually what we would replace the 2 with, has an A flat in it. Well, when we use the 2 common tone rule, it instead gives us an A flat instead of an A. So that's one of the reasons it's diminished. It really has to do with the key signature overall. All right, and then 6 turns from minor to major, and then the other notable one is the 7th, which I said was diminished before. Well, it doesn't turn it into an augmented. It actually just turns it into a major chord. So you can read all about that there. So the answer is that these chord substitutions do work for minor scales. You just have to keep in mind that instead of let me bring it here. So let's get to the types. So instead of a 2-5 substitution, it's going to be a 2 with a diminished sign to a minor 5 chord substitution. But the chords you're actually substituting are the same. They just change in quality. So you'll have to check that out. Let me show you one last thing. So I'm going to do a 2-5 substitution in the key of C. C major first. So 1, 2. Wait, hold on a second. It's really bothering me. All right. We have 1, 2, and then we're going to go to 5, 1. Well, now I'm going to translate into this minor. We have 1, we have 2, but this time it's going to be a diminished. We're still going to go to 5, but this time it's minor, and back to 1. So that's the difference, is that same chords, they just flip. All right, thank you very much, Catherine. Hey, how are you doing, Javaliza? If I am Hovaliza, if I am pronouncing that right. If not, I do apologize. All right, any other questions about chord substitutions or learning music in general? Hey, Flo Kygro. Welcome out to the live stream. Hey, Carol Christensen is here. I was wondering about you, Carol. Glad you could make it out here with us today. So I'm just saying hi to some people. Actually, let me show you. Hey, Cheryl's here again as well. Oops. Okay, so I'm guessing that that's it. I'm going to give another couple minutes for maybe some other questions to come in about chord substitutions. Hey, Daytrucks Dave is here again. So Dave, if you know about chord substitutions and you have a question about how they work, let me know. So that's what we're doing right now. Or if you have a question about learning music in general. If not, we will meet again on Sunday. Same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can actually check out the YouTube page, Lessons on the Web YouTube chain. Yeah, Piano Lessons on the Web YouTube page to see when we're meeting next. Actually, let me show you what I mean while some other questions come in. Hey, we got Gypsy. Hey, man, how are you? I'm doing well, Gypsy. I hope you're doing well also. Thank you for coming out tonight. So let me show everybody. I think that this is one of the easiest ways to figure out when we're meeting in the live streams in general. So if you type in, I don't know, even if you type in lessons on the web, it'll bring it up. So pianolessonsontheweb.com. I changed the name of the channel recently, but you know, you can still figure out what it is. Okay, so here we go. So we are on the main channel page, and if you want to see what we're going to be talking about over the next 4 live streams, they appear right here, and you can, you know, ask Google or YouTube to send you a reminder and check them out from there. So if you want to attend our next live stream, just go to this I answer your questions about piano finger exercises and click that set reminder button. All right, everybody, it doesn't look like there are any other questions about what we talked about tonight, which is totally fine. It was a pretty basic kind of lesson, although it was a little bit more complicated than some, but that's all right. Okay, let me think. I'm going to do an outro for this lesson. You know, as you know, I edit these together and then I put them up later on, sometime tomorrow. So let me think about an outro. So understanding chord substitutions is really important if you want to learn more about music theory, you want to get into jazz piano or something like that. If you want to learn more about chord progressions and about how chords are built, check out the lesson I'm going to post somewhere around here in the annotations for you to click on. And also a link in the description for you for some good continued learning here on YouTube. And if you want to take things to that next level, remember to check out the courses over on my website. So thanks everybody for coming out today. This has been Tim from Lessons on the Web, and I'll check you out for the next lesson. Thank you so much.